Board games, board games, it's what's it talking about. Board games, board games, we're not gonna shout. I am starting off this streaming with a little bit of singing, and over there, they're not riding a bike. I've never seen Mike riding, but yeah, their name is Mike. Mike has made many games they designed, and these games have sprung from this mind. Some of them, they've been developed, and it's a system of rules that have been enveloped with love and care and all sorts of things that are maybe out of the scope of what I will sing. But board games, and it's what I'm talking about. Board games and credits. I'm not gonna shout. Hey, good morning, everybody, and good morning, Sate, who is super excited to see Mike. I mean, I don't know if this is still the case, but Sate's favourite game a while back, I believe, was Dice Hospital by Mike and Stan. And yeah, so I am Bez. This is bath time, because when is bath time? Bath time is whenever you want it to be. And so this is the Bezzy Bath Time board game bladder. Coming up today, we are going to talk about credits. We're going to be talking about what it means to credit someone, how specific you need to be, and where's the line between all these words, because my position is that, it's quite difficult to say, okay, this person's a designer, this person's a developer, because, these terms, whilst there is a definite line, that line becomes so blurry. But we will have a proper chat about that in a wee minute. And so, hello and welcome to the show, Mike. Why did you
Hello.
agree to join me?
Well, I'm just happy to be invited. Happy to chat about the hobby. Also, a good chance to speak to you because we haven't really caught up in a while. I'm happy to be here.
And Kate clarifies that it's one of her favourites. So there you go. And
That's fine.
hello, Paul, and hello, Jess from Thailand. It is lovely to see you. And so, yes, let's move on and talk about brilliant thing. What's a little thing which is brilliant?
Okay.
So you are going to talk about guitars?
I could talk about guitars. Yeah. I have dabbled with music in the past. Actually, my favorite instrument is the drums. Actually, that's what probably I'm best at playing at. All the way through sort of school, college, university. I was in bands, playing the drums. I've still got a drum kit in storage, but yeah, I've got a few guitars as well. I've dabbled. I can play quite a lot of instruments at a sort of a fairly acceptable level. When I was very small, actually, I played the violin. I was in my school orchestra playing the violin. So I guess music generally is a brilliant thing, and I think playing music I find is quite a cathartic activity in terms of like sort of getting emotions out and sort of just sort of being in the moment. There's quite a sort of a zen sort of state of mind that you can get into when you're just wrapped up in playing the song, absorbed in the song, and everything else just sort of cease to exist. That's I quite enjoy it as a I guess a private activity. Performing is also fun, but performing is also potentially quite stressful. Stage fright is a bit of a thing, but yeah.
I mean, I totally empathize with that. Stage frights, people will know that I used to play the keyboards quite a bit, and even the drums. In return for free drinks, I actually got paid for playing the keyboard, but yeah, that was it. Keyboard, and I even got tickets for. But each time you go up, especially if it's if you are the center of the attention, yes, there's a stage fright. Yes, there's this kind of adrenaline, but I feel like it's almost invigorating. Do you not get that?
Oh yeah, very much so. Yeah, it's just that trepidation, that moment before you get up there. It's like this huge, there's like this huge chasm that you kind of need to sort of jump over, and then once you're doing it, once you're into the activity again, you can kind of all those worries kind of go away, and you're just in the moment. And afterwards, yeah, that rush of I did this thing, and yeah, and I achieved this thing, and maybe people enjoyed it, and even paid tickets to come and see it. It's like, whoa, that's a really good feeling. It's and it's yeah, sort of the after gig glow is awesome. Yeah, I do miss it actually. It's something I keep thinking about, maybe trying to get back to someday.
And I think with both of us, it wasn't just because of coronavirus that we stopped performing. So, why did you stop playing the guitar in public?
Well, as I say, more the drums than anything else. But yeah, just it's just lifestyle, just circumstances that just kind of fell out of doing it. Because I don't drive, I don't have the ability to sort of move equipment around, which made it very difficult. When I was a teenager, I kind of leaned on my folks to drive me around a bit, and the guys in my band had cars and a van at one point. But when I settled back in London after university and moved away from the guys that I used to play with, I didn't have a band. I didn't have
Hmm.
a sort of anyone to sort of jam with. And yeah, and I was working. I had other relationships, like games and things were happening. It just wasn't enough time I couldn't spend, and it just kind of fell out of the habit.
And yeah, I guess that's is it. When you move, when circumstances change, but it's like lots of things. There's still this love that continues, and so whether it's guitars or any other sorts of instruments, um, uh, do you play guitars? People in the crowd, let us know why you think that guitars are brilliant. I mean, maybe you don't like guitars at all. In that case, this is not the moment to belittle guitars. This is the brilliant thing. This is very strictly just bigging up something. So tell us why. Oh, I'm just going to acknowledge this chat. Jess says, "Is that Bez there on the left? She's on this show a lot, almost too often. Feels like Bez is the guest Mike has on just about daily. I know, right? Yeah, apparently you're having me on every single day. Mike, can't you ask someone new on?" Yeah, apparently you don't have an answer to that.
I like the marvelous morning meetup. That's cool.
But yeah. Anyway, so this is apparently you've already got to fan club and they want me evicted. I mean, yeah, like I thought we were just going to have a friendly chat, but apparently this is the sort of the.
It's a surprise to me too. It's
Okay. So let's move on to recent highlights, living life and seeing the sights. Recent highlights, playing games and other delights. Recent highlights. I will say that I played last night. Manhattan Projects. I don't know. Have you played any of this series of games, Mike?
I haven't, no. It's on my list of things to try. I've heard good things.
Yeah, I'm going to. I've only played this one once. It was the first time that I played it. I bought it secondhand via Big to Cock before I knew that decided to move. And I only got the chance to play it. Yeah, I will give a proper analysis and stuff tomorrow. But I basically bought it for the espionage track. Was like, okay, I'll check out how interesting that is, how it works. And that was basically why I bought it. And yeah, it didn't feel like ever there was a time in our game to use it. Same as the airstrikes. It didn't feel like it felt like a lot of the game, it just was going to be ineffective to actually. That was slightly disappointing, but it is a really nice game. It's actually quite simple once you understand what you need to do, if you know what I mean. And so it took us about 1 hour to play, even though it says on the back of the box 120 minutes. And that was for our first game, but it was a 2-player game. It's 2 to 5 players. And so that's like, yeah, that whole time frames, it really feels weird to me. Like if it's a 2 to 5 player game and there's a range of times based on player count, why do you just put 120 minutes on the box? That
hmm
but playing that with Layla and then having that discussion afterwards, kind of analysing all the cards, it was a lovely experience seeing Layla, who had we had a plan to meet up. I'm not going to say dates anymore because it's not a romantic thing and people caught me out on that. Yes, but yeah, it was lovely just chatting and being with the cats and having a nice playtime. And yeah, that was my recent highlight. So yeah, what have been some of your recent highlights?
Gaming wise, I guess I'm mostly playtesting at the moment on tabletop simulator. I'm juggling sort of 3 different games that I'm playing with people I know, trying to invite people to help me finesse some projects. In terms of published games, I've got a weekly Gloomhaven game that we're persevering with. We've got the guys that I was playing with. Obviously, we can't meet physically because of COVID and the lockdown. But we've gone old school. I've set it up on my kitchen table and with a webcam pointed down at the board. I've scanned them all the cards that they need to play, and we've just I just move things around. Like they just call out what they want to do. That seems to be working pretty well. We're playing weekly, although we just hit a stumbling block with there's a scenario about halfway through, and I'm conscious of not spoiling too much for people that haven't played it, but there's a sort of a scenario that comes up about midway through the game, where we've got to, which you have to go out and as a party, and it's like this grove full of these creatures, these oozes that replicate themselves. There's like a 1 in 4 chance every round that they will spawn more copies of themselves, and you have to kill some trees that are creating these oozes, and that's really hard. It's like the hardest, and I've looked it up online as well, and it's commonly thought to be one of the hardest scenarios in like the entire game. So we're just we've done like a save game on our third go at that scenario, and it's still probably about 50-50 whether we're going to make it or not. We might have to
So
do it
this is
again.
a way to play games with friends, and I guess you have the tactile quality, but for everyone else, it's kind of okay. I'm
Yeah.
a disembodied ghost voice telling Mike what to do.
Yeah. Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, and that's it really. I guess playtesting because I have a full-time day job that's nothing to do with the games industry. All my game work needs to happen in my spare time. So yeah, with that as well, there isn't a great deal of time left really. It's
And
a
Paul
bit of a
says
juggle.
that they have a story to share about this scenario, although I guess they're not going to be telling it publicly. I'm going to assume that this is because Paul doesn't want to share spoilers. I'm going to assume.
Probably.
But yeah, I want to say a quick hello to Rob, and Rob says like, yeah, they were wondering what had been missed, and yeah, it's bothering Mike under the calm demeanor. It's bothering you that I'm on this show so much, apparently. Yes, Rob finally got to play the crew last night and really enjoyed it and got through the first 10 missions. I've still not played this. I know it's on
Yeah, I've not played it yet
Tabletopia.
either. I've heard a lot of people talk about it. It's yeah, I need to try it.
I mean, I'm
It's on my
definitely
list.
planning to try it, but I'm not sure I feel like I would need to rush to play games. Do you know what I mean? Um, Actually, let's move on. And you can all feel free to kind of please in the comments keep sharing your recent highlights. Tell us whatever you want about recent highlights and games played and stuff. But let's move on to the questionably quick questions because I want to ask you, Mike, like, how do you
Yep.
feel about do you feel like you need to play games fairly quickly after release? Like, how keen are you to play the crew, the winner of the Spiel des Jahres?
Um, yeah, well, I'm not like desperate. Like I must play it now. I must play it tomorrow. I'm not. I guess I don't have quite. Yeah, I'm not
Would you be
desperate to play
happy
it in
to
that
wait
sense.
a year or even
Um,
more?
yeah, but yeah, potentially. Yeah, I mean, from my process, I guess, when I'm thinking about games is wanting to be aware of as much as what's out there as possible. If you're thinking about a particular style of game or a particular theme of game, think is really important to know what already exists, so you don't accidentally copy someone, so you don't so you're not sort of commercially wasting your time because something like that already exists. So I'm quite into that, and particularly where there are moments of innovation between like the thousands of games that are released in the 12 months. There's only not a huge amount of innovation in a lot of them. The ones that do innovate, you're really genuinely curious about, and I understand that the crew might be one of those things, and that so I definitely need to check it out. But it doesn't need to be tomorrow. It could be next month. It could be next year. But I will get to it at some point. It's like I mean now there's so many games that exist in like just generally in the marketplace. That it's really hard to know them all and to access them all, play them all. I mean, I feel. I mean, it must be very difficult to be a new person coming into the hobby now and just being absolutely baffled by, oh my god, where do I start? What's
But at the same time, if you're a new person and then you've never imagine if you'd never played Carcassonne, and
Yep.
it's like, oh my gosh, you're building up a map. This is amazing. And then like you've got all these joys. I mean, and it's like, oh my gosh, I mean, like, yes, we continue to get these innovations from Wolfgang Warsch, from like everyone. Like, I mean, I know that you said you had this talk that you gave at the ACG Designery Industry meetup, if you remember the one I'm talking about.
Yeah, well, that was beginning of this year, in the last year. I did a talk about
It was about
innovations
a year and a half ago, and
just
yeah,
trying to
talking
think.
about how
Yeah,
innovations
innovations
are
in game
happening.
design. Yeah. It's a lot of big box games and what excites me. Yeah.
And Paul says that why don't we arrange a game of the crew? Like, if you're wanting to do it just for funsies, like I'd be up for that.
Sure.
But again, it's kind of like what I was going to say was that in some ways, I just I feel like I'm almost wanting to wait in a way because that isn't that sitting around the table part of the game.
You,
Although
you much
having
rather
said
have
that,
you much rather have that experience in person. You'd much rather make it a
but
more of an
maybe
anecdotal thing.
the lack of talking in a virtual environment is easier because that's a big part of the co-op game of the crew. Same as an
Hmm.
Abbey, it's going to be easier to not accidentally cheat with facial expression. Go, oh my god, I got this really cool card, and people just read that on your face. Which Hanabi having to not accidentally cheat can be so difficult. And are you laughing at this comment?
Yeah.
Yeah, you guys. And so yeah, let's Kate was talking about how they once taught you Dice Hospital, but you already knew how to play. Do you remember this?
Maybe I'm just trying to think. It's been quite a while now. My head's like in a different place now. We're working on new games.
UK Games Expo, long time ago. I think this
Yeah, I
would
think I
have
do.
been
I think I do remember that.
years
Yeah,
ago.
it was quite funny. Yeah, I don't think they've realised this who I was at the time.
Hello, Dutch. What? Let's start off this in a sensible manner. Where exactly are you, and what time is it? Jess has already said it's 5:13 on a Saturday afternoon in Thailand. And where exactly are you, Mike?
So I am in my spare room of my house. This is sort of on the London Essex border in the northeast corner. Like if London is like a huge city, there's the M25 is a big road that goes all around the edge, and it's right in the sort of the top right hand corner where the M11 crosses the M25 right on the edge. Zone 6. For people that live in London, which is the end of the world, it's sort of the edge of the world for some people. I think London is the centre is the only place that does exist. Yeah, and it's 20 past 10. I think I'm in the same time zone as you in the morning. Yeah.
Do you feel like you are known for wearing hats? Is it a deliberate choice at this point to make sure that you get recognised?
Um, yeah, maybe a little bit. Yeah, I mean, I used to have really long hair, like hair that went all the way back, like right down my back when I had hair. Like again, going back to being in bands and like rock bands, metal bands, it was a thing. Um, and when it started receding at the front and looking a bit ridiculous. So I went away on holiday. And was like, oh, it's really hot. It's a really good time. I'll just get rid of the whole lot. But I was like very self conscious about not having the hair anymore. So the hat was like a replacement for and it was just a habit that I got into wearing hats all the time. And now because I wear them a lot, it's got to the point where if somebody sees me without a hat, a lot of people don't actually recognize me. I put the hat on and they go, oh. So it's like, well, I might as well just keep doing it then.
Now, my favourite game of yours that I've played, because to be fair, I've not played a lot of Vampire the Eternal Struggle, is Waggle Dance.
Mm-hmm.
Did you? What is your favorite game that you designed?
Yeah, I mean that probably is my favorite. I mean, it's what three games that have been published with my name on them properly, really. So it's not huge. It's not a huge amount. I still feel like I'm on sort of the beginning of this journey. But yeah, I think Waggle Dance is probably my favorite, just for just the purity of it. Just it came it came out of my head almost fully formed, and the final version that got published was really very close to that first version. Um, and it appeals to me in the way that it's sort of very lightly educational, just sort of tells you a little bit about bees and their behaviour, and that it's quite a serious board game. I mean, it's got quite a light Euro, I guess, gateway Euro, compared to a lot of bee themed games that have been published that are quite deliberately cutesy, quite like positioned for kids and stuff, and that kind of annoys me a little bit. But yeah, yes, because I think that theme has a lot going for it, and it should be taken a bit more seriously. In fact, it's going to be coming back. I can't say too much about the details, but there should be a new edition published next year. Fingers crossed.
um, so, like, do you want? Are you able to talk about Henry? Like, I mean, I guess it's
Well,
besides
I
what's
think enough
happened for
times passed
Goblin
that
Games.
it's. I mean, it's not exactly dirty laundry, but yeah, enough times passed that anybody that doesn't know what happened, I mean, yeah, I'm happy to talk about it. I mean, yeah, it all went a bit. It all went a bit downhill, really. Um, for context, Henry was the guy running Grublin Games who published Waggle Dance. We were friends, and we just got talking about. He did a game on Kickstarter called Cornish Smuggler. Quite a few years ago now, as his first Kickstarter endeavor, when still Kickstarter wasn't quite such a big thing. But yeah, he broke even on that. He enjoyed the experience, and then he had a company, Grublin, that he founded to do that Kickstarter, and was wondering what to do next. And I was saying to him, well, what do you want to do next? Do you have a game? Do you want me to show you some games? So we sat down in a pub one day, and I showed him like 3 different games, and one of which was Waggle Dance, which actually I was calling something else, Honey Master, I think I was calling it as the prototype. But
Yeah, Waggle Dance is a better name.
And he was like, "No, this is a game. I want this game. We'll publish this game. This will be my game." And it started out really well. And that whole journey with the initial campaign and the original products, that was all great. Everything was going fine. But then after that, he did a project about making really weird dice, like really weird shaped dice, as a Kickstarter campaign, which didn't commercially go very well. And then he did a new campaign
So
for
it's
a game.
successfully funded, but like lots of these Kickstarters, maybe
Yeah,
it
like
was just
yeah,
drained energy and
yeah.
didn't
I
give
mean,
him money.
he broke even, but it didn't really help move his company forwards. And he spent a lot of time researching how to make custom dice, and he was working with a designer in Italy or something. That was quite hard to work with. I forget some of the details now, but yeah, that was quite a painful project for him. And then he decided he wanted to do another game himself, design himself, which he put up on Kickstarter as Perfect Crime. And he took it to UK Games Expo just before the Kickstarter launched, and I saw the game, and I didn't think a great deal of it. And I'm saying to him, well, this doesn't look like it's ready. You sure you want to put it on Kickstarter while it's in this state? I'm happy to help you, sort of develop it so it's in a more playable state." And he was like, "No, no, 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 fine." And he was very sort of protective of it as a project. And so after that, communication started to break down a little bit. And then I saw the Kickstarter went up, and it funded, and everyone got quite excited about that game. And I think a lot of people backed it, partly because they backed Waggle Dance before and were expecting a sort of a similar experience from him. And then after that campaign, he basically didn't produce the game. There was no results. He stopped communicating with everybody, and that was it really. I understand from some of the last conversations I had with him and what actually happened was it was him and his mum and his sister were all joint directors of Grublin, because we need to be more than just him. But both his sister and his mum basically basically signed themselves out, so it was just him left. And I gather that he basically just mismanaged that campaign, mismanaged all the funds. He fell out with his graphic designer. And was trying to finish the graphic design himself without any help. And I think the pressure of trying to deliver that game and having spent all the money in the wrong way pushed him over the edge. And I understand he had a nervous breakdown. And as a result of it, and he stopped responding to my emails, to my phone calls, and stopped paying me royalty payments, and yeah, that was it. It was just, and then the next thing, like 9 months later, like Grublin was dissolved as a company. All the assets went to the Crown. I believe there was a few thousand copies of the game left, which I assume went to landfill, because I didn't see them go to the works or anywhere else to be sold anywhere. So I assume they just got pulped or destroyed. No idea, but yeah, that was it.
Sorry, I'm going to actually turn off my screen of the comments briefly, but I think this obviously speaks to the let's say the fact that board games are still being run by individuals that for a lot of the time just don't really know what they're doing. And these are individuals who do sometimes make amazing games. And I've not played Cornish Smuggler. I've heard good things about it. But for sure, the way that Henry published Waggle Dance with those, hexagonal, it was really nice dice, I think. Like, it was really understated what was done with the dice. I mean, there was talk of, okay, let's do this fancy thing. And then in the end, it was just like little understated things, although I hear that did cost a bit more than maybe Henry had calculated for at the time.
In retrospect, I have to wonder how honest he was with me around some of the calculations that he did with that. I mean, he did say that the dice were some of the more expensive components of the game, and the difficulties that we had getting it into international distribution was because he said he couldn't make the game cheap enough to sell to say like some of the big US distributors. But I'm not sure how true that is in retrospect. I think he just made some arbitrary decisions about, I'm not selling it for less than this. And he did some other weird things as well. Like he was like with the sales through his website, he was offering free international shipping regardless of where you were ordering from, which didn't make sense to me. And there was I mean, yeah, in retrospect, there were signs that maybe it wasn't all it was all rosy from a much earlier point than I suspected. But you learn these things. Yeah, with hindsight, things are always different.
Yeah, this is the situation, and people do make mistakes, and sometimes people dig themselves into a hole and sometimes struggle to come out. I mean, I'm not going to let's
well, I mean,
no one has all the information. That's the thing, is it? Because whilst I think it's easy to say, okay, JKLM, that was being run by a really unscrupulous person, where someone was basically saying, hey, designer, give me some money to help produce your game, and then that money was going to help produce the previous person's game, if you know what I mean. So it was like, basically half the people's stuff got produced, half the people's stuff didn't even get produced. And so that was a very clearly unscrupulous person who said that they were fronting money themselves but didn't at all. And I think that it's not as there's no analog to that in the case of Grublin Games. I mean, I'm not here to say
Um, yeah, I
like
mean, yeah, and I mean, yeah, there's it's always very difficult to know, yeah, what people's real motivations are, what people's thinking. Certainly in Henry's case, I don't think he meant to not deliver perfect crime and screw up his own business. But there clearly there were many opportunities where he could have got help, or he stubbornly refused to take that help, which and even now he's never reestablished contact with anyone, or he's never come out and come clean, sort of explained his side of the story. He's just like I know people that I mean he lives down in Cornwall. I know people that play games with him and see him. He's still around, but he's just not involved in the industry anymore. It's like he's just blotted that out, and it's just putting that behind him, which is to a degree fair enough. But I know there are people that still post on the Perfect Crime Kickstarter comments. They're still like, what's happening? Where's our money? And it's like, well, just just move on. you know.
yeah, that's the thing. Like Kickstarter is not a store, and we could have like a conversation for another 2 hours about the nature of it. And
but yeah, I mean there are other campaigns like you say where something more dubious is definitely happening, and that cycle of needing to generate cash flow to cover your mistakes is also a trap that you can fall into. And again, you might not mean to do it, but once you're in that cycle, I can appreciate it's very difficult to get out of it. You've got commitments to all your backers, to all your fans, to deliver, and that cash has got to come from somewhere. It's I can appreciate it's a very difficult situation. It's one I'm not necessarily the main reason I haven't gone into doing it myself, but certainly it's one of the things that concerns me is how good a business person I would be in that same situation.
I mean, that's the thing. Like the ability, and Cesar made a good point that Phil Eklund is one of those people who probably should never, well, arguably, they're definitely good at designing certain things, and there's definitely something about them. They've got this big following, but like there's being a designer and being a developer and being a publisher, these are all very different roles. And I think
Yep.
there is this temptation to take everything on. And for myself, for sure, I am still happy of a lot of my previously self-published games. But if you kind of get a little bit of help along the way, and as I emigrate, I'm kind of thinking, okay, am I going to continue self-publishing it? Am I going to maybe reach out to someone, I don't know, like Lewis or someone else to say, okay, let's Stuff by Bez be almost an imprint of your company, where basically, yeah, I say, please make this, and then like I have more rights and say than a normal designer, but it's kind of working out what exactly do I do, because for sure there's such a different set of skills, and everyone does have to be honest with themselves rather than saying, oh, I really want this thing to be a reality, therefore I'm going to jump up into being a publisher.
Sure, but I guess there's also an element of being open to help, open to that collaboration as well. I mean, one of the things that's impressed me around certainly the UK based sort of design and publisher community is the networking is quite strong, and the support's quite strong as well. And there are a number of people that if you need help, will just if you need some advice about how to go about picking your manufacturer, or how to help with distribution, all that kind of stuff. There's a lot of people that have knowledge now that are willing to share it. All you need to do is ask, really, just hit them up. And they're happy to do it, and I'm really impressed with that. Impressed with our sort of collective community. But if you choose not to tap into that, that's what can you do?
And a quick hello to Casey, who popped in. Lovely to see you. And hello to Alex, who popped in a wee while ago, who says that they might have the dubious honor of looking at one of Alex's games. I pitched it to ACG last year. I'm still working on it. And there was it Dutch Yoda or Jay Foolsguard who just popped in. So yes, Jay, and hello, and yeah, yeah, this really got me going. Yeah, for those who were wondering what, for anyone who's watching this after the fact and saying why was Bez laughing whilst Mike, I'm just going to do some of the highlights. So yeah, and let's watch more. Mike's formats of getting guests on who ask the questions instead of answering them is a great one. I should try to. And agreed, it's great self promotion, and yeah, so that was what really got me going. So yeah, anyway, so I let's oh yeah, there was one question from Rob, which was something about would you rather have a dancing bee or a squawking duck?
Right.
Oh, sorry. A waggle dancing duck or a duck diving bee? There we go. That is the last question I'm going to ask.
Duck diving? What? So what, they dive like a duck, or they dive
I think it's
with
a
ducks?
bee that actually goes through the water. I think this is what it is. So a duck that does the waggle dance, like the proper waggle dance,
Right.
like a bee, or a bee that actually dives into the water randomly like a duck.
Well, I guess I'll go for the duck diving bee because I'm curious to what that really actually means. But yeah, so swimming bee. Yeah, I guess I don't know.
And hello, Chris. Lovely to see you. You've missed lots of fun shenanigans, yes, and that is completely true. So let's move on to the main topic. Before we do, would you like to say anything else to introduce yourself? Because I've done that in an incredibly roundabout way. And would you like to share anything about your typical day?
I don't know. I think I'm good. Yeah. The let's say my days these days right now it's split between my day job and my gaming on the side. I'm also planning to move house imminently. That's a big thing that's sucking up time at the moment. Right. So just off camera here actually is a huge pile of boxes where we started packing. You can't see them, but a lot of games have already been packed away. These behind me are really just what's left to go into boxes. But that'll either be just before or just after Christmas.
So exciting times and hopefully moving into better and bigger.
Yeah, definitely going to bigger place with my fiance. We're actually it's sort of it's a 3-story building with 2 lounges, one of which is going to become a dedicated gaming area. So
that sounds very fancy. May I ask, have you got a date set? Do you talk about your wedding much?
In terms of the wedding, well, we're just really waiting for things to go back to normal. Her brother and sister-in-law were supposed to be getting married this year, which they pushed forwards because of the crisis and not being able to do it properly. And that's now planned for maybe, I guess it'll be Easter or spring next year. We'll have to see. So we're going to let them go first before we start making plans. But I guess maybe end of next year, maybe the year after. We want to get the moving house done first, and then
There's no rush
get things back
because
to
I
normal.
guess for sure you're already enjoying life together, and so
Sure.
At this point, does it feel that's important? Like, I mean, presumably you want to make it official. That's why you're going through with the ceremony, and you want to have a celebration of your future love. But how important is marriage to you?
It's kind of an interesting question. It's not that it's not important. It's just about the timing, I guess. There's a statement we want to make to each other. There's a statement we want to make to our friends and family. It's also a really excuse to have a really really good party. And we definitely want to go to town with that. And one of the difficulties is going to be me not wanting to DJ my own party and actually allow somebody else to do it because I have a tendency to this is what I want to do next. This is what I want to hear next. So that's going to be fun.
I mean, you could always just pre-record something and pre-mix it.
But certainly, yeah, I'm not doing it for cultural reasons. I'm not doing it for religious reasons. I mean, I am, I guess I'm really an atheist. So it's more just about that commitment, about that statement, about that, that opportunity to celebrate.
And yeah, there's a lot of talk about trying to get invited to the wedding, and yep. But as we move on to the main topic, please feel free to comment, ask questions, follow. Yeah, go to my Discord if you want to chat about cats or join the second Best and Friends game day on January the 9th. And let's get stuck into it. So let's talk about credits. Now, credits are, simple definition, credits are a means of telling people who worked on a thing, whether that's part of the rules or on a website. Like, all of this seems like credits to me. It's very self-evident. Would you like to add anything?
No, that seems fair. Yeah, you're just you're calling out who who has done work, who has been responsible for things, who deserves to be acknowledged for their contribution. Yeah, I mean you see it on TV with every film. There are always credits afterwards, all the people that put their work in, and it's not just the actors and the directors or whatever, but a whole host of other people that have added their little bit to make it work. It's most creative endeavors in whatever vertical it is. I mean, it's usually a big team effort. It's usually a much bigger undertaking, I suspect.
And so the question becomes, like, why is this important? Like, if you worked on a game, why do you want to be credited? Why should other people be credited?
Well, I think I mean, if you put like hundreds and hundreds of man hours into a project, you've devoted part of your life to a project, that you want that to be recognised. You want you want that effort to be acknowledged, and I guess maybe celebrity is not really the right word, but certainly the
acknowledgement, recognition.
If you got people that appreciate your work, and perhaps want to follow it, then you want to be able to call that out to make them aware of it, to draw their attention to it, and also, I guess, more there's from a more pragmatic point of view, if you are a creative, and work creatively, you're always looking for new opportunities to work, and so you want your potential future employers or future creative partners to know what you've done, so you can actually you can say, so you can build up like a portfolio of references of things to go and say, I was involved in these things, I've been credited in these things. So you can look at those and judge for yourself. Do you do you want to work with me? Is there an opportunity there?
Yeah, I mean, talking about the pragmatic side, Rob,
exactly.
And I know that John Breger's made a point to me privately that, it's just a way for people to check, okay, actually, they're not just talking rubbish. I mean, let's talk about Prospero Hall for a moment. Like, designers of the little Funko Fighter game and the Disney's Villainous, for example, where none of the individual team members are credited for any individual game. The idea being that they've all agreed that they're going to all go under one brand. What's your thoughts on something like that?
I don't know a huge amount actually about their methodology there. So I would assume that even though there's no name on the box cover or on the front of the rulebook, I assume somewhere all the people in that team are named and referenced, so that you can see.
No, apparently not.
No,
apparently,
not at all.
It is just Prospero Hall is what I understood whilst listening to a podcast with one of the members, where they said, yes, it's so that because if you're listed as a designer on something, that might make you want to almost put in more efforts into it than if you're a co-designer on another project, if you know what I mean. Because it might start to be that you have too much ego if you've got a specific credit, because regardless of what people say, people do value designer more than developer, I think, which maybe
Yeah,
isn't
I
the right way,
mean,
but it's also about encouraging people to pitch in all their ideas and just say, you know what, there's too much of everyone going into all of this. Everyone did something for this game. Everyone playtested this internally. And yes, there was someone who was a project manager, but we're just going to label it Prospero Hall.
hmm yeah, well, well, I mean, if it truly is a team effort, a collaborative effort between a whole bunch of people, then that seems fair enough. I mean, if it was me as the publisher, I think I'd be more inclined to go the other way and just say game by, and just put everyone's names on there in a big list. I think it's fair to acknowledge them. That's interesting. I wasn't aware of that.
I mean, I've not actually got any of their games. I would have to double check exactly how it's written, but again, this is based on a podcast. I think it's
Mm-hmm.
a edition of Ludology with one of the Prospero Hall designers. Right. I wanted to, yeah. Do we? At what point should someone be credited? Like, if someone playtests a game, should they be credited? If someone offers some insightful comment that makes you change the game a fair bit, where's the cutoff?
I don't know if it's like if there's like a measurable sort of black and white sort of type situation. I think it's very much personal judgment from project to project. Also, I guess how much space you've got on your rulebook or wherever you're going to be printing names. There's a lot of Kickstarter campaigns where they've printed the name of every single backer somewhere, whether it's on the side of the box or in the back of the rulebook. So if you've got room to put people's names down, then yeah, why not? In terms of crediting someone for a more substantial contribution, it comes to what do you consider that substantial contribution to be? I mean, if it is fundamentally altering a mechanic in some way, changing the game experience, so then yeah, maybe there's justification for doing that. I mean, it's very much a spectrum. It's very much a grey area. And particularly when you start talking about the difference between design and development, that's also, again, I don't think you can really draw a very hard line. It's the activities are so closely related. It's quite difficult to separate them.
And yeah, Rob says that they get where Prospero Hall are coming from, but in Hollywood, if Rob held a tray of tea in an MCU movie, Rob would be credited. And Rob would prefer to see that. I myself do lean very much that way. As you can see, if you go to stuffbybeds.com/ELL, that will redirect you to the repository. It's just a Google directory currently of L rule sheets. And you can sort of see that I put about a quarter of the space on the rule sheets. Yes, it is a simple game, so I have the space, but I think that it's valuable to say, hey, this is exactly what's happened. This is who did what. Because for me, I worry that if you just say, okay, designed by blah, developed by blah, let's look at Welcome to Dino World by ACG, where I did the visitor cards. And that's the thing that I wrote up on my BGG bio. And I kind of made a note of mentioning a little bit of what actually I did for all of those games. And that kind of feels a lot more meaningful than saying, hey, I was a developer. Because, yeah, saying, okay, I did the visitor cards, I helped, that was my instigation, that was my biggest contribution to that game. I also did the expansions, which, it's did a lot of smaller refinements and things along the way. But if you want to point, and it's also, that's the thing, like if you point to a big thing, it's maybe that's a drawback of my system where it's easy to point and say, hey, this person made this one big change and you can point to it. It's a dramatic, notable thing, but maybe someone was there all the way through and then they said, hey, wait a minute, this should be tweaked by this number, this should, and maybe people don't understand how valuable those little sections are, if you know what I mean. Um, but do you
Yeah.
think that we should move towards a state of just actually spelling it all out for people?
Well, I think acknowledging people's work is fair. I think whether you need to be quite that granular, whether your audience necessarily cares specifically about, person A designed card A, person B designed card B. I think most board gamers out there aren't really going to be too fussed about quite that level of detail. But yeah, saying you've got some multiple developers on a set of cards is probably sufficient. It probably matters more to the person making those cards than it does to the people that are going to be playing with them. Um, I would say.
And there are some interesting thoughts. Nicholas talking about the fact that we could expand those things more fully where we don't have the cost of paper. Um,
Well,
Rob,
certainly on Board Game Geek, there's definitely an opportunity for them to improve the way that they allow people to list credits. I think going back to what you were saying about there being a quite a specific focus around the role of the designer and the publisher, is because when you get Board Game Geek, there are slots for those, but there aren't slots to acknowledge sort of co-designers, assistant designers, and other developers, co-developers, all those other roles, art directors. Those things don't necessarily exist when they probably should do. And if they did, then it would allow people to see more clearly who's involved.
and thank you very much for jumping in, Sarah. It's lovely to have you join the chat. Who says that they also think it's really important to credit the game designers and will always mention who the game is by if I know when I sell their games. I think gamers want to know this too. Um, and so, Sarah, are you a board game retailer? I assume this is the case. I don't know if this is the Sarah that I might know from North London, but yeah, let us know just so that we have a little bit of context. But yes, I've do you do you think it's important to credit people when you're writing a review of a game or selling a game or on when it's being presented on a website? Do you think it's important to say, hey, here's Ticket to Ride by Alan Mood, here's Dice Hospital by Stan Kordonsky and Mike Nudd? Do you think it's important to give those taglines?
Um, yeah, probably. Yeah. I think people that are keen to learn about games, that are going to become more discerning about games, are going to want some of that information. I think there's also an opportunity to talk more about the evolution of a game in the context of the market and what's going on as well. I mean, I see a lot of reviews, a lot of bloggers where they're like, "Here's this game, and this game does this thing, and I'll explain you how the game works, and maybe I'll tell you who made it." And it's like, "Ta-da!" And I think it's brilliant, and that's it. And it's like, well, but okay, but if this is like a Space 4X game, how does it compare to all of the other Space 4X games? What was it influenced by? Where did it come from? Maybe it's inspired by designs by other people that maybe you could name check too. That would, I think to put that in a better context, I think would make for a more interesting review. I don't think there's enough people out there that are doing that I know of. I'd like to see more of that, certainly.
So kind of saying, hey, this is a game, and let's not only analyze games within a certain genre, but actually look at a certain person's library of work and see how they've grown. Is that
Um,
kind of what you're talking
Yeah, I
about?
mean that's certainly one way to go. And there's a lot of designers that if you track them, they're clearly pursuing one specific kind of mechanical idea and sort of evolving that one idea again and again and sort of iterating that thought process. Like if it's where others they're much more I guess holistic in their approach. I mean, like someone like Vlada Chavatil, you can't really pigeonhole him because he's done party games, he's done Euro games. He's done the whole spectrum.
Mm,
But you can also talk not just about that designer's journey, but also the publisher's history. You can also talk about
mm,
that particular theme in whoever's
mm,
done it, or that particular mechanical style. And like we talk about worker placement games, there's clearly an evolution of worker placement as a
mm,
mechanic that you can track through many different publishers, many different designers, but they're clearly all being inspired by each other
mm.
and informed by each other in terms of how that thinking's evolving.
I mean, for sure, Scott Nicholson did a wee bit of this back in the day, back when Scott Nicholson, like the OG almost of video reviews,
Mm.
moved on from doing just video reviews to, hey, here are some games that you might want to try if you like Monopoly, and hey, by the way, this is like really a video to send to your friends who probably aren't so much in the hobby, and here,
Yep.
send this to them. And then started doing more reviews of, hey, let's talk about exactly what you're saying, this style and this style. But it would be nice to have more people. I guess arguably doing a top 10 kind of feels a little bit like that. If I talk about top 10 flicking games, let's say, then, or top 10 dexterity games to be that, well, that would be pretty broad, but I know that I've got 10 dexterity games right now I could say that I'm really happy with, but
Mm.
what does dexterity even mean? That's such a wide term. Like when people say, "Oh, dexterity games," I mean, can you really? I mean, Yogi and Happy Salmon sure are in the same ballpark, but those two and Kerplunk, I mean, those two and Stack Market or Monstrous, that feel. But anyway, like we could, if, let's say, if we were doing top 10 flicking games, that in itself could be an exploration of what the notion of flicking could involve in a game, if you know what I mean.
Yep.
And so maybe that in itself is kind of a little bit of what you're talking about. But actually going into, um, let's go back to the notion of credits. Xate is talking about feeling silly for being credited just for playtesting. And I flashed this up earlier. And Rob said playtesting is a critical part. And Xate's replies, sure, but it's like ninja help. It doesn't need to be called out. And to me, that's like a decision for each individual to make. I mean, it's kind of I feel like ideally a publisher should be kind of keeping track of it. But what is ideal and what is actually response, what is needing to be done. So, like, yeah, this is the question that I'd like to move on to. Does the publisher have a responsibility to keep track of this? Does the responsibility have if someone's playtesting stuff at Playtest UK, for example, that's all done in terms of reciprocation. So it's all kind of, okay, you don't need to credit me on your thing. I don't need to credit you on my thing. I will probably put a blanket and thank you to everyone at Playtest UK here for it.
Yep.
If I'm playtesting it at a pub or getting random people to play it or at a convention, I don't know. I'm not saying I do this and I feel bad that I don't, but it seems like the ideal situation would be to have a little form and say, okay, how would you like to be credited as part of that playtest feedback form? And I don't tend to do feedback forms. I tend to nowadays just observe and then make changes. And then by the time I'm 2 changes in, the old suggestions aren't even relevant anymore. So, but should we really be saying, okay, how would you like to be credited as a playtester if it turns out that you've done enough to merit being credited, and keep track of that?
Um, I don't know. Again, I don't think it's clearly going to be one way or the other. I think it tracks back to what I was saying before about do you have the space? Do you have the space to be able to credit everyone? Do you have the inclination to do that as part of your project from the outset? I mean, um, I mean, in terms of different use cases, different scenarios. I mean, like if you take a game to UK Expo and you get a bunch of different public people sitting down and playing the game, you've got a lot of people playing the game once that may or may not give you some useful data. I mean, and if you're certainly if I'm present, I'm usually just listening and so sort of absorbing that data to see what's useful. But I think the development process generally is more about what recurring comments do you get, what recurring data points come up. If one person says one thing about oh, the game should do this, or I don't like this about the game in isolation, that's not terribly useful data. That's not something that's really going to influence your process. But if you have 50 people telling you something very similar about the game, oh, that it should do this instead, or that we don't like this element, or it's taking too long, or whatever their comments are, that that reinforcement of the same response, the same data is something that should inform your process, and you should be listening to that data. But in that case, there's no one individual who's really responsible for that. It's collectively everybody. So then it's again, do you have space to credit absolutely everyone? And particularly in a convention scenario, do you have time? Do you have the bandwidth to capture everyone's details? And that's quite hard when you're really busy and you don't necessarily have a lot of bodies on the ground. I don't think there's an expectation that you would have to do that. I think when people come to try your game, they're not expecting to be remembered necessarily. But on the flip side of that, I mean, there are like proper ninja playtesters. I mean, I've got a couple of guys that I rely on, Tabletop Simulator at the moment, and we meet not necessarily every week, but certainly very often to play the latest iteration of a number of different projects, and because they're playing over and over again and they're putting their personal time in, I think those kind of people definitely should always be credited where possible. For their contribution, because they're going above and beyond that sort of one time. They're not just dipping in; they're really committing to helping you.
I mean, yeah, it says there's a difference between played at once and play tested throughout the process, which ties into what you're saying. And I do agree with you that it is about that consistent feedback. Like in Kitty Cataclysm, I would like to think that I credited, by name the people who were there the most, who I managed to remember. I mean, my memory is fallible. We've already established this multiple times on this show, I believe. I can't quite remember. But in all sincerity, sometimes you do get someone who says, hey, what about this? And it might, a lot of the time, as a designer, it's your responsibility, or a developer, it's your responsibility to decide, hey, I'm going to listen to this person, I'm not going to listen to this other person. But sometimes someone comes up with an idea that's like, oh my God, you know what? You're completely right. That should be the way that you're saying it. And if someone makes like a landmark decision, it feels kind of more notable and slightly different. Would you agree?
Yeah, I mean, if that particular observation, that particular comment really is like the lightning bolt striking, then maybe there is an exception for calling it out. Often though, it may be that you don't realise how important that comment is until much later, much sort of after the fact. It's sort of made in a quite throwaway manner. It's only after you've gone away and you've thought about it a lot and you've played a few other versions, you might circle back and go, oh yeah, maybe that was more important than I thought, but then maybe you didn't capture the details like you should have done. I don't, or maybe you did. I don't know. But certainly, if it's if it really changes the way you think about the game, then some mentions probably worth it. Some probably worthy. Again, it comes back to, do you have space to credit everyone? Do you have the ability to credit everyone? And say for me, who is normally just the designer or the developer, it's not my decision, how the rule book is structured, or how the box is structured, or how the Kickstarter campaign is structured. That's not my call. I can offer the publisher here's a list of people that helped me make it, or that I've recorded playtesting it. Are they going to name check all those people? That's not down to me. That's up to them.
I mean, really, this whole topic is within the remit of the publisher. As you say, it is out with the hands of any designer or developer, unless you are self-publishing. And I think that if you have those credits, if you have that list, then you can for sure show it to the publisher. And it depends on how the publisher's values align with the notion of crediting everyone. I know that, for example, you see so many games nowadays. If you look at Subterra, there's a massive list of so many Kickstarter backers, and it, yeah, wouldn't it be nice if games can afford to have a few more sheets of paper for that? Maybe having a few more sheets of paper to just say, "Hey, here are some playtesters that we want to give special thanks to." The other notion is that when you know you've got a list in film credits, and I guess going back to why is it good, part of it is to say, yes, I did that, and you actually believe me. Because I could say that, okay, there's this game from Helvetic, I don't know if you know the company, who made Bandido. And there was this game called Misty that was coming out. I met Helvetic and Hardy at Cannes Festival International de Jeux at 2019. I was wandering around before it opened one day, and then I got to sit down, and then we spent a good like 3 or 4 hours playing through all their games. And I was like, oh, I'm really excited that you're telling me how all these games are bad. I'd actually like you to play this other game that isn't printed yet.
Yep.
And then, so with Misty, I was actually quite annoyed at the fact that there was one part where it was a boy and a girl, and then if they kind of met, it was only if it was a boy and a girl, then you'd get bonus points. And I said, this feels wrong because this is very heteronormative. It's kind of, what's it? Why shouldn't it just be when any two people meet, like you get points? And they could be friends. They don't. It doesn't need to be about romance. And Huddy was, and then I talked, and then Huddy was like, "Oh, you know what? You're completely right. I'd never thought about this in this way." And then the next year, Huddy said, "Oh, no, I think it was actually the same year at Essen when it had been printed." And then 2019, Huddy said, "Oh, I did this game, and thanks to you, I've changed it, and now it's just smiley faces. And when two smiley faces meet, then you get points." I mean, I personally would have just been like, yeah, whenever two people meet. But that I'm glad that it wasn't what was originally done. And I could stand here and tell you that. And I believe that if I asked Hadi to verify that, then Hadi would. But again, that's a game that only credits two people in its rules. It credits I think, the original designer and the artist, and that's it. And so there's probably going to be so many more people who went into that. And how do they kind of tell people, yes, I genuinely did development for this? Or, hey, I mean, my thing, I was just there, but this isn't like about that instance. It's about, yeah, sure, if people do this kind of thing, and then if they say, hey, I've contributed to this game and this to this game as kind of free labor, then it would be nice if, I know exposure isn't everything, but if you get even that would be nice. Do you get where I'm coming from?
Yeah, maybe. I mean, you have to wonder in that situation: does the publisher not consider those contributions to be very important, and that's why they don't name check people, or is it that they don't do it just because that's a habit of people are expecting to see, like the top key, like who the designer, who the publisher, who the artist is, and because that's just what they're used to doing. They just don't think outside the box that maybe more people should go on that list. It's definitely a talking point now within the industry. I think that certainly like the role of the developer is underappreciated, is not called out as much as it should be. And that, and certainly in terms of the commercial success of games, the developer is potentially more important than the designer. I mean, so it's all very well coming up with a sort of a great key mechanical concept, but if there's no theme, if there's no execution, that's not a game. That's not a sellable product. That's not something that's going to go anywhere or get recognised. Like critically, it needs to be the whole package. And and now competition in the industry is so fierce. You need to have that package. It's not, you can't just punt out a half-baked game and expect it to do well. Those days are way gone. It's getting much more fierce.
Yeah, 100%. And like this ties into like what I really wanted to spend a
Mhm.
wee bit of time, especially because it's you
Yep.
here. Like, what is a developer? Like, and where is that line? And how should developers be credited? Let's can we maybe set a little bit of context? And could you talk about both the history of Dice Hospital and also, I believe it's all publicish information, what you can share about the follow up with
Um,
Daryl Andrews?
yeah, sure. I mean, yeah, Dice Hospital was an interesting project. Perhaps an atypical project for what you might see in the industry. I don't know. I mean, that's it. It's going back to what I was saying before. I mean, I've only had been involved really in 3 key titles, so my experience is kind of limited. I'm still going on, starting my journey, I think. But Dice Hospital began with a conversation with Cesar Al-Jassar, who's the owner of Alleycat Games. He'd recently signed up this concept of Dice Hospital from Stan. It was Stan's game solely originally that he pitched to Cesar. But Cesar had mixed. Well, he wanted to get some new products going, but had some mixed feelings about how well the game would do in the state that it was in. That it needed a lot of polish to really make it an attractive, enjoyable, engaging game that would have replay value. And we were actually talking about a completely different project. Like when our initial conversations were about something else entirely, and he would just say, "Oh, we'll catch up at Aircon. I've got this game that needs playtesting, that needs developing. I'm not quite sure what to do with it." And so we got it out and we played it, and I was like, right, yeah, the core concept around the dice and the patience and the healing of the patients, that's absolutely brilliant, absolutely genius. Stan deserves all the credit for that. But the puzzle element, the sort of the bit that would make you want to sit down and play it, certainly more than once, wasn't really there in the version that Cesar originally showed me. There was no color coding really. The colors really were keyed to like if you have red dice, it would come out of the bag as a 1 or a 2, and so I was like, well, but if you do this, and this, and kind of explain my ideas around making that puzzle elements, then that would be brilliant. People would love it. It would go down really well. And he was like, you're absolutely right. I've tried to have this conversation with Stan. It's been very difficult. Would you like to come on board the project and help me with the project? So actually, all my conversations were really with Cesar. They weren't really with Stan at all. I actually, weirdly, although we are credited as co-designers, I didn't really have many conversations directly with Stan about it because Cesar was in charge. Cesar controlled the project, and that's how we wanted it to go. So, and we we had quite a good relationship. So I was just doing my best to help him out, really. And I did subsequently get to meet Stan at Gen Con when we flew out to Gen Con the following year. And yeah, he seemed like a great guy. He seemed to appreciate what we'd done to the game. And yeah, I think he'd yeah, understood that all the changes were for the better. Um, and yeah, it's, and subsequently, yeah, it's been quite a success. It really pushed Cesar and his company to the forefront. I was really pleased to be involved with it and to help him out and to give him that opportunity. Um, but yeah, I mean, uh, co-designing, typically you would expect maybe a bit more interaction, which is why I say it's maybe an atypical experience for the industry. If I was going to set out to co-design a game properly with somebody, then we would sit down and we would design it together. We would communicate and agree on what that product would look like before we put it in front of a publisher. Whereas this was kind of the reverse. And I'm certainly open to collaborating in the more traditional sense. I just haven't really had that opportunity yet.
So, I mean, it feels like development and obviously, well, not obviously, but to my understanding, Cesar is also a little bit different to a lot of publishers, kind of, rather than saying, okay, well, you pitched the original idea, you're the designer, end of story, which is kind of the way it typically goes. And okay, no matter how much you did after that, you're the developer, which is a line that some people do draw. Whereas Cesar kind of sees it more as I want to represent how much structural changes were made, and okay, the design is as much not just that initial idea of the dice representing the patients, which is a brilliant idea. And, without Stan, the game wouldn't exist. Without you, it wouldn't be like have been a lot worse. I dare to say it would not be a commercial success, frankly.
It certainly wouldn't have been the same game. Yeah, and personally, yeah, it probably wouldn't have done as well as it has done in the form that it is in. Yeah, I think
But
I think most publishers go through this process. Like when they get a pitch from a designer, that the publisher will almost certainly be thinking about who's my audience. Do I need to retheme it? And do I need to further develop it? I'm sure that happens a lot, and that the games that designers pitch to publishers are very rarely the games that you see when they hit the market. They always go through that sort of transformation process. It's just I think a lot of publishers don't publicly talk about that very much. They don't explain that process. They don't acknowledge that process in perhaps the way that they could. And there's often, maybe there's one key person involved. I mean, like you mentioned John Bridger very early on. I know that he's doing a lot of development work with like the role player guys and some other guys, and his contributions have certainly been fundamental to the success of a lot of those games. And he's starting to get some recognition for that quite fairly. And there are other people too, like Johnny Pack and a few other people as well. That what they are doing to transform these games is really important. Is key to making those products what they are. Is key to why they're bought. Why people love them so much. Is that it's to producing that final product.
I mean, it feels like sometimes you do more and sometimes you do less. And certainly, as a developer, it would be easy to say, okay, if you're in house, you get counted as a developer. If you're not, then you're a designer. But then what happens with Fantasy Flight when they've got in house designers where an entire game idea springs up? And if someone were to look at the way that Welcome to Dino World came about, and I think that the original designer would agree that the Gen Can't version is so fundamentally different to the retail version that ACG puts out.
Yep.
I mean, I would say it's maybe about 20-30% the same almost in terms of like the feeling of it. And at a certain point, yes, you need to kind of say, well, this person isn't saying this person's the only designer. What does that even mean? And yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, depending on the state that the game's delivered in the first place, it's certainly going to need it. It's not always going to be the same amount of work that's needed, and it also depends on the scale of the project as well. I mean, something like a 12, like a small deck of cards is going to need a different amount of work, like development wise, from something like Europa Universalis, which is a Kickstarter that ran last year, which is like a huge, crazy, epic, historical sort of political strategy war gamey thing based on a computer game where they've actually had crowds of hundreds of players help them playtest it on Tabletop Simulator to refine and balance and all these different things. I mean, that's like a completely different scale of effort. But effort is, of some degree, is always going to be needed. I guess one difference is if you want to be a designer, I think you also have to be a developer. You're iterating your own ideas. You do have to think about the commercial viability of what you're doing and sort of the uniqueness of what you're doing as part of your process, and certainly whatever version you make, you're probably not going to be happy with. You're going to see its flaws. You're going to want to change it. You're going to want to evolve it. That is a development process that you'll be engaging with, really. So I think it's very difficult to be a designer without being a developer too. But inversely, you can be a developer on a project without being a designer necessarily. If you're just nudging a few parameters, if you're just refining the balance of things, you're not necessarily fundamentally changing the core mechanics. In some cases, you're just getting it over the line. You're just giving it that final polish.
I see that Nicholas, I mean, this all goes into understandability and how you communicate. It is a challenge in communication of what happened. And I guess there's a value in recognizing the work that people do, because if we want to say that this labor has value, then to some
Mm.
extent it should be acknowledged. Nicholas's point, I'm going to um, yeah, something that may come into play from the side of the brand presence is that there may be a risk of, instead of being able to just say, here, this is our game, when a publisher has lists of contributors of varying lengths associated to different titles, when people like or dislike a game, they may start looking into that list and speculating about that. And that's such a potentially confusing metric in this and potentially other cases that it's just easier to leave it out. So basically, what Nicholas is talking about is just going back to that Prospero Hall. It's like, well, if you like one of these, then you will like all the Prospero Hall games. Try and chase up more things by Prospero Hall because it is trying to build a brand. But for sure, you can have ACG front and foremost. And if people have enjoyed multiple games by ACG, maybe they will be more likely to buy a future one. But there is still a range of let's say, styles and whatnot. And so folk might want to investigate. But if you have something by, oh, what's that? Oh, sorry, I'm drawing a blank. I was trying to think of someone who only makes really heavy games. Let's say Plastic
Mind
Souls
Clash.
Company.
Mind
Yeah,
Clash, they make them actually one of my favorite publishers, but yeah, their games
yeah,
are not for the faint-hearted necessarily.
for sure. And so let's say that you have enjoyed Cerebria. That's by them, right?
Yep, yep.
And then you might be
And
thinking, okay,
Shakirian and Anachrony, yeah.
yeah. And you're thinking, okay, what else do you like? Okay, if you've and Satu's loved all of them, then maybe is going to go and chase up the next one. But
Yeah.
then I would say that the fact that they have the designers listed, does that detract from their personal branding? And I would personally suggest no, but I don't know.
Yeah,
Maybe it does in some
I
negligible
wouldn't
way.
necessarily say so. Nicholas raises a fair point that if you're crediting so many people as significant contributors to the project, then maybe it's hard to work out, who has contributed the most value. But then maybe,
Hmm.
but I'm not sure that that's as important as just tracking consistency. I mean, if you're if you're a discerning fan of the hobby, it's no difference really from being a discerning film critic. Is that when you're you assess the project for its face value, but you're also thinking about the consistency of the people that have been involved, and maybe it is the publisher. Maybe the publisher has a great track record of everything they produce is golden, and it's the publisher's methodology that's really important there, and that's what you need to take away. But sometimes you also see publishers who they have a great title, but then they've got 20 not so great titles, and it's like, well, so where would the magic come from for this one great title? Was it the designer? Was it the developer? What happened when lightning struck there? Let's maybe have a look at those guys and see what else they're doing to see whether they, do they show consistency when you track back
Hmm.
through their projects. I think offering people that information is better than not offering people that information. It's up to them ultimately to make those decisions and to do that research. But with that information doesn't exist, you can't do it.
Yeah, and Nicholas says they were also thinking that people might be tempted to use the amount of people involved as a metric for good or bad development. So maybe they're thinking that if there's 2 pages of names, then that means the game is somehow better. People talk about things seeming to have been rushed through development, even without another number to confuse things further. The experience of the people is not reflected in the number alone, for example, and so forth.
No, definitely not. No,
And I
and again,
think, sorry.
analogies. I mean, yeah, you see like TV and film projects which are really pioneered by a small group of individuals, like Christopher Nolan's films, for example. It's a very small team of creatives that involved in the scripts and the editing and so on, compared to some TV shows where there's like all written by committee. Like every episode is like 12 people in a room brainstorming over like 1 hour of entertainment, and And I don't think one approach necessarily suggests one kind of output or one kind of outcome. It's just you have to sort of take each case much more individually, much more again, just looking for just look for consistency.
I mean, it kind of gets into the false story that is so attractive of this one person who has this big idea, and there's this flash of inspiration, and then you make it. And maybe that's why there's the notion that the designer is clearly the most important person in the success. And then on the other side, there's
you do have hero people that kind of that are like exemplaries of our kind of archetype, aren't there? It's like Jamie Stegmaier basically does everything himself. The guy behind Gloomhaven,
Isaac
games.
Shelters.
Isaac. Yeah, he does basically everything himself. That was a huge labour of love for him to make that giant coffin of great content, all pretty much not exclusively single-handedly, but certainly he did all the heavy lifting, and that archetype suggests that happens all the time, or that methodology is always the same, when actually it's not. It's those guys are probably actually more the outliers than vice versa. That there are very few people in the industry that do that much themselves, that can take that much credit for the success individually. It's like much more like generally the other thousands of games released. It's much more flat in terms of more people being involved and key to the success of those projects.
And for sure, like Stuff by Bez is 19. I would say I contribute more to something that's Stuff by Bez than Jamie Stegmaier does to Stonemaier Games, because I mean
I guess you yourself are one of those outliers,
but I don't want to. For sure, it like goes into that product design. Like I keep saying that Yogi, yes, more and more I've played it, more and more I appreciate what they did with those changes to material components. But like on the one side, you've got like this alluring story that's everyone just. It's not just about the single person who does everything themselves, but it's also that single flash of inspiration in like, creative media. You have this wonderful moments with music, not to, but ignoring the fact that Mozart, they might have spent days or months on a single piece of music, and ignoring. And then on the other side, you've got the, hey, number of playtests, number of people involved equals greater quality. Ignoring the fact that you can be mindful about your playtests, you can be mindful, you can have a smaller number of people who keep playing a game and potentially actually get deeper into it. Like the fact that I was able to go to Royal Festival Hall and have 4 people who all knew how to play Kitty Cataclysm and sit them down for 90 minutes and knock out 10 games of it. That was really good because we were playing at a high level, and it was like, okay, this game is still interesting after 100 games because these people are, but also like it's, just number doesn't equate quality. Number of playtests doesn't equate quality. And
totally. If you don't listen to the data, or you don't have a methodology that necessarily improves your game in the right way, it doesn't matter how many people are going to play it. It doesn't end up getting any better. And you're also right that the more complex games, certain games with longer play times, you do need data around people that know it, that really push those boundaries, that really try and break it. You don't want just sort of first time play data. You need the deeper data as well. And that's why, like for example, going back to Europa Universalis, that's why it's taking so long to reach backers, is because they've realized how much time it needs to take to refine and to get people to play it all the way to the end and try all the different scenarios. They really need to put that work in to make it a better game.
Yeah, Rob's saying that there's no single element that makes for a perfect game, but there's a whole bunch of names that would make Rob investigate, you being one of them.
That's very
And
kind of you to say. That's very kind. Certainly, I would agree with Will's comments about David Turtsey. I think he he seems to be touching many games and future projects at the moment. But yeah, he seems to be his consistency is great. I'm really impressed. Um, maybe jealous isn't the right word, but yes, certainly I would love to be in his shoes to be able to do this full time and to that degree of quality. Yeah, very impressed.
and can I ask you about, is it Dice Theme Park? Sorry, Dice.
Um, yeah, you can. Yeah, I mean it's
Share as
Cesar,
much as you
I mean
are willing to
Cesar
share.
and Ali Cat have already started dropping hints about the fact that we are going to be doing another game called Dice Theme Park, which is very much a spiritual successor to Dice Hospital. It's going to offer very much a similar dynamic of
Mm.
sort of some shared elements, sort of drafting things from the middle, and then also focusing on a puzzle around your own theme park, where the dice are the 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 guests of your theme park, and the pips kind of represent their excitement. And rather than trying to pip up the dice, you're actually spending those pips on their excitement on them going on rides. And when they basically get exhausted, they're going to leave your park and they're basically done. Um, and again, that that didn't originate from me. That originated from Daryl Andrews and his co-designer. Um, and they pitched that to Alicat originally, and again, Cesar took the view that he wanted to take it into another level. He wanted to make it more like Dice Hospital than the original pitch. And again, he asked me to come in and to look at that and to advise on how it could be reworked a bit, and not to the same degree as Dice Hospital, where a lot of them, where much more of the elements were sort of redone. But with Dice Theme Park again, it's not the same game that was originally pitched. A lot of work has gone in to to change it to according to Cesar's designs, desire to appeal to the same audience and to evoke a similar sort of mood. Yeah, and we're in a third round of public playtesting at the moment, so there has been an opportunity for people to apply to playtest. We're going to be gathering that data in a couple of weeks. We'll be looking at locking the final version in December, and it will be on Kickstarter at some point next year. I'm not quite clear what the timeline's going to be yet,
Mm.
but yeah, I'm looking forward to that.
That's,
I'm hoping that's it's going to be as appreciated as Dice Hospital was.
and I understand there was a sorts of mock-up cover shared, possibly with Daryl Andrews, who was
Um,
quite frustrated with the way that credits were represented.
yeah, I think well, I wasn't present for the conversations that happened, but I gather sort of secondhand that he perhaps thought that I was going to take credit for all the design of the game, which is not true and not fair. They are both being credited as the principal designers. In this case, I'm being credited as a developer, just a developer.
Mm.
But because of the effort involved, in my name still going on the box as the developer, but separate to
Mm.
them as the designers. That was the agreement that we came to, which I think everybody is now happy with. But I think it was just a few misunderstandings around that to
Okay.
begin with. But yeah, the box cover looks great. It's being the art's being done by Sabrina again, who did the art for Dice Hospital.
So
Um,
just to clarify, because I think I maybe misunderstood Daryl Andrews' position, because I saw Daryl Andrews' Facebook post and asked
yeah,
to
well,
clarify,
he
but
yeah,
so originally Daryl Andrews
it
thought,
blew up. That post I think was based on that misunderstanding. I think that
hmm,
it blew up because yeah, he thought his work was being appropriated in a way that it turned out not to be. And I think he's a lot happier
sorry,
now
you're
than he
going
was.
out a little bit, Mike. I don't know if it's
Yep.
because, okay, brilliant. Thank you very much.
Um, yeah, I think yeah, he did post on Facebook at one point, seeming like he was very angry with Cesar. I think at that point he thought his work was being misappropriated in some way or not being represented fairly in some way. But I think that's been smoothed over now. I think he's a lot happier now. Um, but yeah, that's fingers crossed. It was all good now.
So it came from a misunderstanding that you were being presented as a designer.
Yeah, essentially.
Okay. And I mean, I guess even though this was never the issue, like it does kind of beg the question of who should go on the front of the box. What should the front of the box be? I mean, at one
Mm.
extreme, you've got Abyss, which is literally just a big illustration on a face. And it's like this monstrous face. It makes a bold impact. And then you've got to look at the other sides to even see what the name of the game is. Whereas, yeah, you've got the standard version, which is okay, name of the game, and Alley Cat Games often puts okay, name of the game, name of the illustrator, name of the designer, and a wee ACG logo. And sometimes you've even got a tagline, but this is all a branding, like what should go on the box thing. But do you think, I mean, there being on a box or being in bigger print, it suggests more prominence. It suggests you did more work. Do you think that's fair to say?
Well, I think it's fair to say that any justification for being on a rulebook or on the front of a rulebook or for being on the front or the back of a box, that justification, I think, in principle, is around a serious contribution, like a significant contribution that's fairly acknowledged in that way. But at a higher level, like what you're saying about Abyss, I guess it depends on your point of view as a publisher. What is it? What is it that's important to you as a publisher that you're trying to communicate to your
Mm,
audience? Is it can you rest on your reputation as a publisher that if people know it's from you, that they're not going to mind, like all those other details, like who it's by, who it's developed by, what have you. All that stuff gets pushed into the background because you're relying on your own reputation and potentially your consistency. That's not going to matter so much. And that's probably more of a consideration for more established companies like Fantasy Flight or Wizards of the Coast or whoever, where they've got such they've been in the industry so long, they're of a certain size, they have a certain reputation that WizKids or people like them that they carry their products for them. Really, that's or something by Fantasy Flight you can guarantee is going to be a certain production quality, whether or
mm,
not it's a certain sort of design quality. Maybe is an open question these days based on the number of changes they've been through. But certainly there was a period, say 10, 15 years ago, where they were the mark of quality. Like everything they produced was amazing. Battlestar Galactica, one of my favorite games of all time, I guess, is sort of the peak product of that era. But for new companies that are just starting out, that don't have that reputation, they don't have that. There's no market awareness in the same way. Then they're not able to rely on just their brand carrying it all. They probably are going to want to more obviously name check the people involved in their projects, because that's a more useful reference point for the people that might be buying the products. It's
mm,
um, well, I don't know who this company is, but I know who that person is because I played one of his games before. So that's a way of establishing trust or establishing a way in. And I think part of this is I was thinking around Dice Theme Park, and like specifically, is because I was crucial to the way that Dice Hospital turned out. He wanted to acknowledge my contribution to Dice Theme Park for the benefit of the audience, to say you can rest assured that it's going to be like Dice Hospital because Mike was involved.
mm. At least somewhat. I mean,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
and we've already talked about Vlada Shvatel, which kind of seems to pop up every week. I mean, so we've already hit the Vlada Shvatel kind of. Um,
Yeah.
it's like one of those bingo games. How, in like, if someone were to make a BBBB show or MMM show kind of bingo card, then one of them, Vlada Shvatel. My memory is bad geography, but someone should do that. That would be fun. But talk. I want to, and but still, even though there's a diversity in style of Shvatel's output, um, okay, I was going to say that I genuinely don't. I have personal dislike for Good Question. I think that it has some issues as a. Um,
Well, that's a question. Is that one of
oh
his
yes,
games?
that's a
That
question. That's
That's
the
a question.
question.
Yeah, I'm not a
Sorry,
big fan. I'm
whose
not.
question is the one by Repost? That's the question is the one by M. Shavatzel. Sorry.
Yeah, I didn't get on with that game so well either. I didn't.
But for the most part, no one's going to be 100%. And that's the thing. Like, sometimes you need to allow someone to, okay, that's not your best thing. But for the most part, whether it's Galaxy Trucker or Mage Knights or Bunny Bunny Moose Moose, you can see that there's some love and some skill in what went in there.
Yep.
And so there is still this recognition that brings it up. I was going to say people are talking about Board Game Geek credits, and I'm going to start wrapping up in 5 minutes or so. So if you've got any final comments or questions relating to the topic, please get them in now. I wanted to say, yes, Board Game Geek 100% should add lots of credits, IMDb style. That would be the ideal. But given that they haven't, like, why aren't publishers like making one post in the general parts of the forums and saying, hey, here's everyone who works on this game? Is it just the labor involved of doing that, I guess?
I don't know. I don't have an answer for you. I think yeah. Every publisher is going to have different opinions, different thoughts about this process, which you can't really call are going to be called as right or wrong necessarily. But yeah, my personal feeling is more publishers could say more about the people contributing their projects, the methodology they go through when they make their games. I think I think there's no downside to more transparency around that. I don't see any downside to doing that. Just whether people are willing to do it or not.
Okay. Say it's been suggesting hospital theme park mashups, which sounds kind of horrifying. Yeah.
Yeah.
Freezy clown cars transporting dice after they're dying. Yeah.
These that's not they're not really family games. No, that's not really what we were going for.
Okay. Yes. Let me starts off the recap again. Look, we talked about guitars. We talked about violins and all sorts of music performances and drums. We talked about Manhattan projects. And then apparently there was a mic takeover of the show, which happens in. Yeah, that was a crazy thing that I'm going to a conversation that I'll remember forever. And now I will constantly have nightmares of Mike coming over and saying, okay, Bez, you're not allowed to do this show anymore. It's time for the Deadman Ghost to take over. We talked about approaches of Prospero Hall and reasons for this. I mean, when we talk about reasons for why we do this, I think it's, yes, there's the professional reason for the person being credited. Yes, there's the it's good for the person being credited in terms of it gives them some. It's also good for the consumer in that, firstly, there's some accountability. Like, if you see Paul Grogan's name on a rule sheet, then you know that Paul Grogan's done a certain amount of work. Like, Paul has
that's another role that definitely should be called out. Actually, we didn't touch upon it earlier, but yeah, the rules editing is an underappreciated
there's so many
art.
roles, like graphic layouts, and the fact that I look at this rule sheet. I'll talk about it later. I'm not going to call it out right now. Then I'd have to qualify everything. But like, when I'm like, yeah, this is a badly written rule sheet, and then I look at the back and look at the credits, and I see that there's no credit for rules writing. I mean,
well, right now it's like, well, Paul Grogan wasn't involved in this game. Well, that's a reason for me not.
No, come on, Paul can only do so much. I know you're being facetious, but
talking about quality and consistency, though, then yeah, if he's touched it, I mean, it's going to be a lot better than if he hadn't.
If Paul's name is on it, because Paul was talking, I think it was last Friday, that Paul was saying how, like, yeah, at least one game that Paul has been involved in, the name doesn't appear on the manual, because Paul was like, well, I'm giving you my opinion. If you're not going to take that on board, if you're not going to add on another sheet of rules, which allows me to explain this game to the level that it should be explained, then frankly, I don't want my name involved in this. And it adds some assurance of quality and accountability for the person whose name is in it. But also, I think it is good for the consumer. I think it's good for, like, games are a worthwhile medium, so I think it's worthwhile to know that the game of Monopoly originated from McGee as the landlord's game, and to know that Darrow had basically bugger all to do with it, and the development was not Charles Darrow. Charles Darrow was not the developer. Charles Darrow was at best a marketer and a good business person. And all the development, as I understand the story from the sadly out of print book, The Monopolists, which is brilliant, brilliant, brilliant. If you can get a copy, do get it. It goes into like this. There's whole side tangents with the legal battle between anti-monopoly and monopoly for them being able to trademark the monopoly as a word for a game. But basically, there's all these Quakers, all these unnamed people. And I'm not saying that if we named the individual Quakers who were responsible for that game, that the world would be a better place. But the fact that, it's yet another person taking credit and for stuff that they didn't even do, which seems quite
unfair,
damaging, or at worst. And yeah, Xate says in the response to the recap, a real leader doesn't need to start his own coup. And Paul will touch your games for a £5 note. Literally just touch it. But yeah, we talked about space, we talked about websites, we talked about like possible confusion, and we talked a little bit about the difference between developer and designer and how all these things can be confusing to people. Like, what does this mean? But then if you actually take the time to explain it, if you take the time to say, okay, what Bez did here is this kind of thing. What Turksy did in this game was this kind of thing. What Nick did in this game was this kind of thing. What James did was this, and like obviously we all work. I'm referring now to Welcome to Dino World, but it's seeing like, okay, for the benefit of someone who's interested in games, obviously I'm a lot more interested than most, but I would like to see credits which go above and beyond and even say, hey, this is the story of how the game was made. And this is literally all the people. And yes, we had some unnamed playtesters, and there was like a good chunk of people at this convention, but thank you to all those people, even if we didn't include your name. But this is kind of the story of how it was made in an abridged form, not a whole design diary, but like, and I am all for
I'd love to see that.
a bit more paper.
I'd love to see that in more games. I noticed that Awakened Realms has started doing something to that effect, where they're producing art books and sort of and other commentaries and things around their products, telling more of a narrative around the game. I'd love to see more of that. I mean, I watch like film DVD commentaries from directors and writers. I love that stuff. Just to or the making of books that you can get for different things. So yeah, I love learning about the process and what happened behind the scenes. I'd love to see more of that more generally for the industry. That would be great.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of touches upon what we were talking about yesterday of having like notes not just for credits but also for, hey, this is what I was thinking. I mean, maybe not in the way that Phil Eklund mixes I'm not going to say flavor, but science, fact, or theory with the rules in the middle of the game.
Well, yeah, his mission is very much trying to be educational, trying to be simulationist, isn't it? That's the goal. When you pick up a Vergessen game, you're going to go through an experience. It's not necessarily going to be the same experience you get from a family game, but again, I'm a big fan of his. I really enjoy a lot of his games. High Frontier, I love. I think it's a great game.
As we wind up, I see that no one's got any final questions. Do you have any final thoughts as we say good before we say goodbye?
No, no, I don't think so. No, it's been great to chat. It's been great to be here. Thank you very much for having me.
No, thank you so much. I want to say, if you want to check out Mike's stuff, those links should be clickable. On YouTube, it will be in the comments. On the Facebook, it will be in the thing. And Twitch, it will be in the comment. I mean, on YouTube, it's in the description. But yeah, that's all it. And if you want to find me, I'm stuffforpets.com, stuffforpets.bigcartel.com, where, yes, some games are sold out, but you can buy PNP versions of Kitty Cataclysm and more Dell Deck, twitter.com/stuffbeds, instagram.com/stuffbeds, twitch.tv/stuffbeds. I'm here every day at 10 a.m. UK time, youtube.com/c/stuffbeds for the old shows, stuffbeds.com/discord. And yeah, thank you, Mike, and thank you, everyone in the chat, for the excellent discussion, both on topic and I'm going to call it off topic, because no, Mike is not actually taking over the show. But before we skedaddle, I want to say it's over to you. What are you up to? You can share anything you want to. So anything that you're looking forward to doing. Yeah, so anyone in the comments, feel free to share any things that you're hoping to get done, anything that you're looking forward to doing. Honestly, I am going to go to sleep again after a wee bit. I'm hoping that I get yeah, then two teeth is on my mind, but yeah, I'm looking forward to tomorrow's show. I might play a wee bit of Soul Thing. Oh yeah, Girls Game Shelf. That's on tonight, I believe, at 6 p.m. UK time. And Girls Game Shelf are having their final ever episode, which is kind of sad. So that's something that I'm going to try to jump in on. But yeah, what are you looking forward to, Mike?
I am going to be looking forward to getting some lunch in a moment. I'm starting to get a bit hungry. This afternoon, I will be looking at one of the projects that I'm involved in. Actually, is contributing some narrative material to Vampire the Masquerade chapters, the game by Flyos in Canada. I'm doing some scenarios for, and we're going back and forth by email a moment about the content of the scenario. So I'll probably take a look at that this afternoon. I'm quite looking forward to doing that. Also prepping for a Vampire Masquerade RPG that I'm running tomorrow. I need to spend some time on this afternoon. Looking forward to doing that too. Yeah. So.
And apparently the crew on BGA, Board Game Arena, isn't for everyone. It's premium, but I think that the crew on Tabletopia is something that you might be able to try. Really nice show, Mike. Thanks for asking guys along. I'm just going to share a link to the Girls Game Shelf, so feel free to yeah, go there, and at 6 p.m. it'll be, I'm sure, a delightful show, and I'm very much looking forward to it. Yeah, if you want to check out my future streams, look at stuffbybez.com/streams. Tomorrow I am going to be reviewing a bunch of stuff. I'm definitely going to be giving my initial impressions on Manhattan Project. I'll probably expand on Mind Out by Lewis, and probably a couple of other games that I'll kind of decide, okay, here's games that I've not even played in a bit, but I've played, not eager to play them again. It's not, look, these reviews are as almost more about me saying goodbye to these games in some manner, and just kind of for my own benefit and rambling and blethering on for a few hours. And please, next week, please feel free to share and spread the word. I do have. I'm going to actually delete the Ben Maddox thing because just so do. We've got accessibility in marketing on Monday, agile game design with Janice on Tuesday. Wednesday will be a solo thing. I will just be playing a game. So, Saints, feel free to skip that or drop in as you wish. Thursday is anyway publishing with Vincent from Lucky Duck Games, which I'm quite looking forward to because Vincent
cool.
is a
Yeah, he's a nice
wonderful
chap.
person.
I just got the new Chronicles of Crime stuff through the Kickstarter to try. That's something else I'm looking forward to. Maybe next week we'll try one of those. Maybe 1400. We'll start one of those scenarios. But that's a great series of games.
I still haven't played more than 2 of the original scenarios. I was keeping them to kind of go through it maybe with Mina, but our plans keep getting kind of shifted because Mina's not feeling up to it, and so yeah.
Yeah, of all the investigative detective style games, that's definitely my favourite in terms of like the innovation of using the app in that way. Unfortunately, it makes it very difficult to play remotely because you really do need to be in the same room to be able to scan the cards and share the 3D stuff. That doesn't really work online.
There's a lot of really cool stuff, and I've chatted to Vince once before on my Board Games with Bez internet radio show, and they're a wonderful, modest, kind of really humble person, really forthcoming with information.
Yep.
And yeah, then starting next week, it's going every Friday is just going to be a chaotic thing. Everyone's welcome to jump in, jump out, pop in, pop out, whatever figure of speech you enjoy using. Sate saw pictures that show my Dice Hospital expansion is in boxes. It looks like it might be coming soon.
Ali Cat shipping everything. They've been doing it since last week. They've been flat out with Royal Mail. The Dice Hospital expansion, Tungaru, their tin box games. They've all finally arrived after waiting ages because of COVID causing the delays and stuff. It's all finally here and going out, which is great. Looking forward to get a copy of the expansion myself after all this time. It'd be good. And my 3D helicopter in particular.
Sorry about that. I was just looking now for a place for the Twitch people to see if they want to read somewhere. And okay, I'm going to suggest a raid to this person. I don't know how long they're going for, but this is a pianist who I think is lovely to listen to. And apparently it's Sate's payment from Essen last year. But there you go. These things always take a while. But I want to say, oh, Alex, oh, you wag. But a lot of love to everyone. I have only one thing left to say, and that is bye, 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 bye. This is a goodbye song. Bye, 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 bye. Thank you for watching along. Bye, 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 bye. This is the end of the show. Bye, 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 bye. And now it's time to go. Bye, 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 bye. This is a goodbye song. Bye, 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 bye. Thank you for watching along. Bye, 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 bye. Yeah. Bye bye, everyone, and lots of love to everyone. I hope that you have a wonderful day. Bye bye.